She was still alive when the rope burned through her skin. Not alive in the way people usually meant it. Not screaming. Not fighting. Just breathing in short, broken pulls while the summer grass cut into her back and the sun baked her blood into the dirt. Her name was Leah Monroe. She was 21 years old, and if no one stopped soon, she was going to die right there on a prairie that did not care enough to notice. One leg was twisted wrong, trapped in a loop of coarse rope that had been dragged so hard it stripped cloth from her calf. The other lay useless, dust-caked and shaking. Every breath came with a wet rattle, like her lungs were filled with something heavier than air. Her ribs felt cracked. Her hip burned so deep she could not tell if it was pain or something broken inside. The last thing she remembered clearly was the sound of hooves behind her. Not fast. Not rushed. Slow. Patient. Like whoever rode that horse already knew she could not outrun him. Hands on her ankle. A laugh near her ear. A voice telling her to stop pretending this was not the law. Then the rope went tight. It only lasted seconds. Long enough to ruin her. Not long enough to finish her. The horse spooked at something, the pull changed, and that was the only reason she was still breathing when the world stopped spinning. She kicked and twisted until something in her hip screamed white. She bit the rope until her mouth filled with dirt and blood. She clawed at the grass until her fingers split. Her voice ran out before her fear did. By the time the rope loosened, she was barely conscious, drifting in and out like a candle fighting a hard wind. That was when the shadow fell over her. At first she thought it was him again. Her body locked in reflex. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard it hurt. She waited for the pull. It didn't come. Instead, a man stood over her with the sun at his back. Broad-shouldered. Gray at the temples. The kind of man whose posture said he was used to standing between trouble and something weaker than himself. Elias Caldwell. 49. Former lawman. Retired in name only. He didn't swear. He didn't shout. He dropped to one knee. Her vision swam. She saw a hat brim. A weathered hand. A knife sliding from a sheath. Panic surged through what little strength she had left. No, she rasped, or tried to. It came out thin and broken. His voice came low and steady. The way men speak to wounded people and frightened animals. Easy, he said. I got you. She didn't believe him. She had heard men say that before. Men who smiled. Men who promised. Men who lied. The knife moved to the rope. Hooves carried faint on the wind. Hurry, she whispered. Eli didn't rush. That was the strange part. Even with danger moving closer, his hands stayed precise. He braced her ankle and cut the rope with careful control. One slice. Then another. The loop fell away, leaving raw skin and a deep purple groove that looked like a brand burned into her flesh. He kept his grip steady so her leg wouldn't drop wrong. When the last strand fell loose, he slid his arm under her knee to support her weight. She sobbed. Just once. Not loud. Just a broken sound pulled out of her chest. You're safe for this minute, he said. That's all I promise. Grass moved on the rise behind them. Eli made a decision without saying it out loud. He lifted her and carried her low through the grass, keeping his body between her and the sound. His horse waited where he'd left it, reins loose, ears flicking. He settled her into the saddle with a gentleness that didn't match the violence she'd known. They rode off the trail, angling toward land that dipped and folded enough to hide them. Eli kept the horse at a steady pace, not fast enough to draw attention, not slow enough to invite pursuit. Only when the hooves faded did Leah realize she was shaking. Don't take me back, she whispered, her voice barely there. Back where? Dodge City. The name landed heavy. Eli knew Dodge City. He knew men who wore law like a costume. He knew what happened to girls who learned things they were not supposed to hear. He turned his horse toward his ranch near Fort Dodge, far enough from town to be quiet. Close enough for trouble to wander in anyway. At the ranch, he cleaned her wounds. Brought water. Brought a cloth. He checked the swelling. He listened to her breathing. He set her leg carefully. He didn't ask questions while he worked. He worked the way a man does when he has seen too much to panic. That mattered more than he knew. The first night, Leah barely slept. Every time the wind moved the cottonwood outside, her body jerked. Every creak of the house sounded like hooves. Eli sat in a chair by the door, not watching her, but watching the world beyond her. When she finally spoke, her voice shook. She told him about the saloon. About serving drinks. About listening. About hearing names. About horses and cattle seizures that didn't add up. About money that wasn't supposed to exist. About how men talked when they thought no one important was listening. Then she said the name that made his shoulders tighten. Roar Madsen. A deputy. A badge. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. She pulled a folded paper from her skirt. Proof. Not much. Just enough. Eli read it once. Slow. Then again. That's trouble, he said. That's why I ran, she said. I heard about you. They said you wouldn't play along. They said you quit because you wouldn't look the other way. Silence settled. Not heavy. Honest. If Madsen comes, Eli said, he won't come alone. That night, a horse stopped outside. The knock came slow. Confident. Sheriff business. Eli opened the door just enough to see Madsen smiling on his porch, hat tilted just right, badge catching the lamplight. I'm looking for a young woman, Madsen said. Thought you might have seen her. The paper he showed was sloppy. Forged. So is this, Eli said. Madsen tried to force his way in. The lantern fell. Darkness swallowed the porch. They hit hard. Wood cracked. Fists thudded. Madsen reached for his gun. Eli kicked it away. Madsen backed off, blood on his lip, eyes cold. This isn't over, he said. I know, Eli replied. The next day they rode to Fort Dodge. To Marshal Thomas Granger. Granger listened. Asked sharp questions. Studied the paper. Held it to the light. Looked for the lie hiding in it. That deputy's been circling trouble for a while, Granger said. Now I have a witness. One more name came out. Harlan Voss. Big cattle. Big money. The kind of man who paid others to get dirty. If Madsen is the rope, Granger said, Voss is the one holding it. On the ride back, gunfire cracked from the creek bed. Hired men. Not law. Eli pulled Leah down into the dirt. Shots snapped close. Dirt jumped where bullets struck. Eli took a grazing hit on the shoulder and kept moving. They escaped because the men weren't paid to die. They were paid to scare. Back at the ranch, Granger waited with backup. That evening, Madsen returned. This time with hired muscle. This is your last chance, Madsen called. Lantern light flared. Freeze, Granger shouted. Everything broke at once. Madsen lunged. Eli met him on the porch. The gun went off, splintering wood. They rolled in the dirt. Eli kicked Madsen's gun away. Granger's men closed in. Cuffs went on. You think this ends with me? Madsen spat. I think it starts with you, Eli said. Madsen was taken. Voss wasn't. Not yet. The weeks that followed were harder than Leia expected. Healing took time. Some days she could walk a few steps. Some days the pain put her back in bed. Nightmares came without warning. Rope. Hooves. Laughter. Eli never pushed. He brought coffee. He fixed fences where she could see him working. He let her see that life kept moving. Granger sent men. Questions came. Papers were signed. Names were written down. Each signature felt like reopening a wound, but Leia kept going. She testified. Her voice shook. Then it steadied. The courtroom listened. Some people looked away. Some leaned forward. Some pretended not to know her at all. Madsen was found guilty. Voss stayed in the shadows. A letter arrived. An invitation. Signed, Harlan Voss. The wax seal carried the same cattle brand as the token Madsen had dropped. Eli didn't answer it. Quiet returned. Not peace. Quiet. Voss's men began riding past the ranch. Not stopping. Just watching. Once a fence wire was cut. Once a calf went missing. Once a warning shot was fired into the dirt near the gate. Not loud. Not obvious. Just reminders. Leia healed. Slept longer. Flinched less. Laughed once when a fence post nearly took Eli with it. The sound surprised both of them. It felt strange and good, like something alive again. Courage, she learned, wasn't loud. It was staying. Telling the truth. Choosing kindness in a world that rewarded cruelty. It was putting one foot in front of the other even when your body wanted to freeze. Eli learned too. You don't fix a broken system all at once. You fix it one decision at a time. One refusal. One stand. One moment where you say no when silence would be easier. They married without spectacle. No crowd. No pretending. Just a small room. A few witnesses. Two people choosing each other without promises they couldn't keep. Not because everything was solved. But because they chose each other anyway. Leia became Mrs. Caldwell without shrinking. Eli didn't become a hero again. He became something harder to break. A man who showed up. And the story stopped being about rope burns and badges. It became about choices. About standing when it's easier to step aside. Because one honest decision turned a hunted girl into a wife. And a retired sheriff into a man who remembered what he still stood for. And somewhere beyond the ranch, Harlan Voss was still watching. But for the first time in a long time, Leia wasn't running. She was standing.